of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. treasures that fade, never enough. Then you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, I know it's true.
Come set your rule and reign in all our hearts again. Increase in us, we pray. Unveil us why we're made. Come set our hearts ablaze with hope, like wildfire in our very souls. Holy Spirit, come invade us now. We are your church. We need your heart in us. Seek your kingdom first. We hunger and we thirst. Refuse to waste our lives, for you're our joy and prize. To see the captives' hearts release, the hurt, the sick, the poor at peace. We lay down our lives for heaven's cause. We are your church. We pray, revive this earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Unleash your kingdom's power, reaching the near and far. Forms of hell can stop. Beauty changing heart. You made us for much more than this. Awake the kingdom seed in us. Fill us with the strength, love of Christ. We are your church. We are the hope on earth. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray.
Hey HSM, welcome back to Generate. We are kicking off our fall semester with this new series called Squad Up. What are we talking about? We're talking about community. So some of you may have seen that Netflix show called Community. It's about a lawyer that gets discovered that his lawyer license is bogus, and so he has to go back to school, and he creates a community at the school. Different people, different ideas, different jobs, and they become a friend group or a community. So let's look at some other definitions of community. Having a particular characteristic in common. A group of people living together in one place, especially one practicing common ownership. A body of nations or states unified by common interests. A feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Or my personal favorite, a group of interdependent organisms of different species growing or living together in a specified habitat. A community, it is a social unit with commonalities such as norms, religion, values, customs, or identity. Communities may share a sense of place situated in a given geographical area or in virtual space through communication platforms. HSM, it is time to re-engage into our community, our faith family. So for the rest of this month, let's come together, let's re-engage, and let's squad up.
Hey there, Generate. Welcome to our first series of this semester, Squad Up. What we're going to be talking about over the next 3 weeks is this idea of community. And what does it mean to be a part of a community? What does it mean to function within a community? How do we contribute? How do we take away from our community? And all of the good stuff that comes with community. Now, that word community is a pretty broad word. It's pretty big. It's not easily defined. It's not something that we can just come up with or think of really simply. And so to help us do that, we're going to be talking about community in basically two different factions, two different types of community. And the way we came up with these is that if we look at Scripture and we boil down everything Scripture has to say about community, it fits into one of these two categories. We have the inside community and we have the outside community. Pretty straightforward, right? We have our inside community and we have our outside community. Now, inside community is everyone that lives inside of your home. Essentially, if we have to make it as simple as humanly possible, if somebody lives in your home, if there's someone that you see every day in the place that you call home, your four walls, your kingdom, that is your inside community. Your inside community has the opportunity to influence and impact you the most as a person. These are the people that you're going to spend the most amount of time with on an average day. These are the type of people that you're going to see the most. These are people like your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, whatever your nuclear family structure looks like, that's going to be your inside community. Now, next week, Scotty Beth is going to really unpack inside community and all the good things about that. But to just give us a quick example of what inside community looks like, we're going to be looking at Ephesians chapter 6. And here's what Ephesians 6 has to say. Starting in verse 1, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." Now, when we see this passage, if we look at who's being spoken to in this passage, it's really just three parties. You have parents, you have the person writing, and you have children. So really the two parties concerned here are parents and children. This is a perfect example of Paul giving us an example of what it means to have inside community and how to engage and interact with that inside community. These rules are very specific and they're very strict within that. These aren't things that you would probably apply as much to broad community, things that are much larger and much more outside. These are things that apply specifically to those relationships. And so that's what we have as a part of inside community. The other type of community that we're going to be talking about over these next couple of weeks is the outside community. Now, inside community is everybody inside of your house. Outside community is everybody outside of your house. It's pretty broad, but it's pretty simple. When we think about outside community, these are the people that you see on a regular basis that don't live with you. These are people that you see like your friends at school, your teachers, your coaches, your classmates, your teammates, your recital friends, whatever word you use for this kind of stuff, your bandmates. These are the people that you see that you don't live with, but you still spend a good amount of time with. These would be your outside community members. Now, our outside community is very different than our inside community. Your outside community is going to be much more broad, right? You've got all these different kinds of backgrounds and thoughts and cultures kind of converging around you. Your outside community is going to be much more diverse, much more complex. Your outside community is going to need a different set of rules and ways to engage and interact with for us to be really functioning members of a proper outside community. To give a quick biblical example of this today, is we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 20. And we're not going to read all of this stuff off the screen, but basically what's happening here, starting in verse 3, is we have the 10 commandments. And we see God is giving his nation, Israel, these community standards. He's giving the outside community a way to interact with each other. These commandments have things that kind of at the top that are very specific, talking about things like honor your father and mother, things like that you should have no other gods before me, all that good stuff, all the way to things that are as broad as don't steal, don't commit murder, all those other very important community standards. You'll notice that unlike our inside community example in Ephesians, our outside community example is very broad. It's not talking about one specific role. There's not a parent or a child. There's not a brother or a sister. There is just a person, a functioning member that's outside of a specific role. That's what our outside community looks like. Our outside community should look very different than the way we look a lot of times. It should be diverse and should require community standards that are much more broad and much more open. Now, I'll be really unpacking outside community in a couple of weeks as I talk specifically about a different example of an outside community. But to kind of wind us out tonight, what we've talked about is our inside and outside community. But the big thing that I want you guys to walk away with is knowing that community is important, and how we interact with that community is equally as important. How we function in these two types of community is just as important as the community itself. You see, it doesn't matter if we're really introverted or we're really extroverted. It doesn't matter where we fall on a social spectrum. All of us have an inside community and an outside community. And how we interact with that community as a Christ follower is equally as important as knowing that we have an inside community and an outside community.
Hello, and welcome back to your favorite time of the week with Carson Farmer. It's not back. Fart. What? Start over. Welcome to your favorite time of the week with Carson Farmer. It's me, Carson Farmer, and I like to give you the 3 action points for this week. They're all questions, not really points, but you'll get there. 1, what is community? That's for you to discuss with your D group. If you don't have a D group and you're watching this on Twitch or YouTube or Instagram or whatever platform you're watching it on, email Scotty, Beth, or Cody. If you're like me and your mom still makes all of your doctor's appointments, have her do it. The second action point for this week / question for this week, what does community mean in being a disciple of Jesus? Jesus with a capital J. What does it mean? Explain it. The third, and probably the most important, and it definitely needs a turn, how are you going to step back into HSM this semester? Fall is where we're at. How are you going to do it? It's a you question. You don't blame it on your mama or your daddy or, oh, well, my friend didn't tell me. No. How are you going to step back in? Volleyball's not an excuse. Football's not an excuse. You need to step back into community at HSM, and we want to know how. Discuss those with your D groups tonight, and I'll see you next time on the best time of your week with Carson Farmer.